What's going on, YouTube freaks? Must be the flavor, and I've been playing Ready or Not for about a month now. So let's take a deeper dive into what the game is, how it plays, and my overall feelings about the game. But before we get into that, let's roll that intro.
Hello, shorty. What are you doing?
Nothing. Sitting here watching the game, smoking some bud.
Are you all alone?
So Ready or Not is this ultra-realistic first-person shooter where you take control of a SWAT team leader and lead your team through multiple different scenarios throughout a city called Los Sueños. And in this city, you're going to be doing multiple different scenarios that contain SWAT teams where you have to go and bring order to chaos is what they call it, for neutralizing the target or killing targets or securing the targets, clearing civilians, clearing objectives, and multiple other things like that. Based on the scenario or the mission, you will have to strategically direct your team through the entire mission, because the goal is to minimize the killing, minimize the damage, saving all the civilians, and completing all the objectives. So do the strategic placement of moving your squad, or doing call outs for your squad into a room, or splitting your squad up to help you complete the mission. It requires different paths into completing the mission through a combination of communication, strategy, and first-person shooter. But those are just the basics of the game. We'll dive more deep into it as we go on. So I like to do with a lot of the games, I like to do one complete playthrough of the entire game where I post and share it, obviously on YouTube, but to kind of get a feel and get my thoughts together before I kind of judge anything right away. I made the mistake on my first playthrough is doing it in commander mode. Now, in commander mode, what happens is it's kind of like a Iron Man or permadeath run. This game also has an Iron Man mode, but commander mode is different. So with commander mode, it's basically you carry over all your officers and all their traits throughout the entirety of your playthrough. Now, what can happen is that your officers can die and you can finish the mission. So once officers die and you finish the mission, you have to hire on new officers. Or some of your officers have anxiety, stress levels, and it can actually cause your officers to either resign, leave, or quit. And effectively in this commander mode, you're supposed to manage every single aspect of that. Manage your officer stress level and manage your entire team. And what also I made the mistake of on commander mode is that I didn't realize after you die, you actually get kicked out all the way to the main menu and have to reload into the mission all over again. So every time I died, it killed the runs for me. It killed my runs multiple times because it just was a pain in the ass to get kicked all the way out to main menu and have to load all the way back in. We'll talk about that more later when I talk about issues with the game, but that was a pain in the ass. But during my real first playthrough, I was stunned based on the graphics, based on the detail, and the scenarios and the missions. But we'll dive more into that in detail later. But during my first playthrough, there was a lot of positive things, but it was so easy to die. I found out real fast that you can't just push your way through and just charge your way through the mission. You can die really easy in this game, which makes sense because kind of the whole point of the game is realism, right? They hit realism over the head and the hammer with this game multiple times. And that kind of gives it a little bit of its charm, right? That kind of makes it unique, is the realism factor. And that's why I think a lot of people like myself played it, because it's just different than a lot of the cartoonish things in like Fortnite, Call of Duty, and whatnot. It's really hardcore realism on this game. But I ended up finally finishing the playthrough and kind of got my thoughts together on it. So let's start first with the story. So the story of Ready or Not, there's not really a traditional linear story. You could say like with like a Call of Duty campaign or anything like that. It's, you get thrown into the police department and you're kind of already in charge of a team, and you kind of just start with the missions, right? Start with the scenarios. You complete each mission, and sometimes the missions loosely connect to each other, but there's no real like overarching story that combines it, right? It's like the story is held together loosely in the background, and it kind of creates this environment, this ambiance every time you return back to the police station. And what I started noticing and feeling was like, it kind of feels like a droll horror type game, because you're completing missions. There's no cutscenes or anything like that after you complete missions. You're completing missions, going back to the police station, and then you're just going back to the operations desk and loading up the next one. And what happens sometimes is like, you'll bust one guy in a previous mission and it'll lead you to the next. Oh, we got more details from the guy we busted type of thing. And you go into the next mission, into the next mission, into the next mission. And there's not really like a climax to anything. It's just kind of all working up in the background. As the setting of the police station and everything, right, is this, they're playing on real world aspects. They're playing on the public looks negatively upon police. I would say there's a certain section of the population that look down on policemen and women and look down on law enforcement in general. So the game comes from the aspect of everyone in this department knows that the public's not really on their side. They're doing a dirty job. It's one of those gritty, tough, dirty jobs that have to be done. And even though they're doing the right thing, they're getting pushed back from the public. And that's kind of just happening in the background. There's no story to it, right? There's nothing to tell you that. It's like these little hints here and there. And when you actually walk around at the police department, you can hear NPC characters actually make conversations like that. You know, characters talk about how they don't know why they're putting their lives in such risk, putting themselves in such danger when no one cares that they're doing that, right? And so that's kind of the theme that the game's going for, is that super like realism, and it plays off of like current day, the current world aspects of what's the feeling like of law enforcement and the public's feeling. So that really was like pretty cool to see them integrate it's so interesting because they're using such a raw and current theme and ideology that's currently happening and kind of shoving it in your face in this game, which I think gives its unique aspect to it. While other games focus on avoiding real world topics and avoiding certain themes, this game really kind of pushes those buttons and sets itself apart from others.
So the story really is just like the ambient feeling that it's trying to create around you, the environment that it's creating around you.
And that's really all that the story is to that, because it's just filled with that backstory for the background, really. Because the missions, they loosely connect to each other sometimes, and they just branch off to either another mission or they doesn't branch off at all. As for the missions, is one of the parts that just took me aback was a first-person shooter and it was heavy on the realism part, right? I guess I was not prepared for how real the situations would be from the aspect of it being from things as school shootings, gas station shootings, home invasions, just real world scenarios like that you always hear on the news and you see all the time on the news, right? But actually going through it and, when you shoot someone in the head, with one bullet, they die. Same Call of Duty where you gotta triple tap them in the head and they die. You kill the NPCs, one shot in the head, bullet, you die very easy in this game. One shot to you in the head, you're dead, obviously. I was blown away by the detail they went into each mission, because from what little research I did, apparently Void Interactive actually got a lot of feedback and a lot of firsthand experience from actual police officers and actual SWAT team members, which they helped use to create the game. Because in these missions, right, we're used to people being shot and killed in video games, right? But there's some missions where women are being trafficked, kids are being trafficked. Kids aren't actually in the game, but there's a few missions to where they have pictures of kids on walls where you're busting these individuals who are actually trafficking children, seriously inappropriate things like that. And I was just shocked because I've never seen it so raw in a video game before, right? You kind of see it in the movies and whatnot, but for whatever reason, when I saw in the video game, I was like, wow, they really are not afraid to push the buttons on real topics, right? So unfortunately, that stuff happens in the real world. and it's terrible and it's awful. And we play video games and stuff like that to escape these certain scenarios, but they really were not afraid to. They were not afraid to just say, "Hey, we're going all in on this realism aspect, not just with the graphics, the details, and everything, but we're going all in the scenarios, the missions. We're going all in with all that." And I was taken aback by that. I was like, "Wow, what a like interesting way to go about it." Because I know that in the research that I did, very little research that I did, they got pushback based on certain aspects of the game. And I can see why they got pushback, because for a second I was just like, wow, I was taken aback. I was jarred by, holy crap, this is a topic that I was not expecting to face in this game. Nor should you ever really want to. It's one thing to talk about robberies at gas stations and home invasions and stuff like that. But when you start talking about children and getting to that aspect of trafficking and stuff like that, that's a line that a lot of people are not ready to cross, and no one really wants to cross because it's just pure evil. So I was just taken aback by how real some of these missions were, and that they did not shy away from using actual scenarios instead of a typical gas station robbery, terrorist act. A part of me wants to say bravo to them for confronting the player with scenarios and instances that are so real they kind of make you feel uncomfortable as you're doing them, right? Because if you're going to play off the real aspect of it, unfortunately there are men and women out there in law enforcement who have to deal with these kind of situations, and they are real, and the men and women have to deal with the actual implications of them, of not just if they save a life, if they have to take a life, or if they go home to their families and deal with that kind of stuff. So I say bravo to game developers for trying to get that point across, but I can see easily how a lot of people are just turned off from that aspect alone right then and there. A lot of us play video games to escape real world nonsense, but the art aspect of it being real and raw is commendable. Now for the gameplay. So for the gameplay, gosh, it took a whole run through and a couple plays after that to finally start to get a understanding and a feel for the mechanics and the movement, because a big part of it is I guess you could call it the order wheel, where you would give orders and direct traffic for your team. Because I know that I first was like, all right, my team just follow me and I'll lead us through it. Well, I did that until I kept dying. It's funny because I had a thing where I said, I keep getting turned on in this game. I just get turned on. And what I mean by that was like, I would turn a corner and an enemy wouldn't be aiming at me. As I'm telling them to get down, they're aiming a different direction. And then I turn a corner and see them, and then all they do is one shot me in the head. They just turn, and apparently like all these NPCs, all these like henchmen thugs, like they're John Wick, they got aimbot, aim assist on. Because there's been some instances where I'll share in the video where I'm like 20 feet away. They're downstairs and I'm upstairs 20 feet away. They're not even looking at me. I turn the corner, I'm looking at them, telling them to put their gun down. Then all of a sudden you see with the pistol, boom, one shot, you're dead. Oh, that was one thing that just, the gameplay, I was just like, God, like this is, you got to be really careful. You can't just run and gun through this thing because it's so real, right? You get shot once, you're probably going to die. No one really lives after being shot a couple times, unless you're 50 Cent player.
Many men wish death upon me.
Especially if you're shot in the head or wherever, you can bleed out in this game as well. But after I realized that, I tried to do the thing where let my teammates just clear the room, right? So you let your team clear the room. You're not really just playing. You're kind of just playing this. You're basically just being a SWAT team lead simulator, basically, right? You're just leading the team. You're not doing anything. You obviously want to play. You want to get the job done yourself, right? So there's like that perfect balance of, all right, let my team flash and clear this room, or I'll flash clear this room, they fall in behind me, there's you can go different ways about it. So like a lot of my first playthrough, I was like, all right, let my team clear, because like I said, when I play on commander mode, which was a mistake, you could play 15-20 minutes of a mission and then get killed and you have to load all the way back out and load all the way back in, which takes 5 minutes alone. So that would kill multiple of my runs. So you kind of find a fine balance and you kind of understand the game, right? Now I understand it, type of thing, So once I played through my full playthrough on the commander mode, I played quick play, and you can kind of mess with things a little bit more and test things more out. And then you can start to get the feel. Because even if on quick play you die, you can just restart right then and there, which I don't know why you can't do that for commander mode, but I'll talk about that here in a second. So one of the main functions is obviously the order wheel. One of the other things that was, took a second to adapt to was you can't really run in the game. There's only walking and there's like a slight jog. So if you have your primary or your sidearm, what you do is like you hit down on the D-pad. I play on controller, but if you hit down on the D-pad, your gun actually gets into the ready position. And so it allows you to move a little bit faster. I remember my first playthrough, you just move really slow. And it's kind of annoying because like you want to rush through it at first, right? Kind of, but you can't. So you just take it slow with the movements, getting used to the movements and getting used to the mechanics when you shoot someone, when you secure them, arrest them, or when you flashbang individuals. It's a feel for the game. You just play it and then you start getting the feel for it. But it's very rewarding when you take out a suspect, like they're shooting at you and you shoot back at them. Like if you've got a good aim and you're just dead on with the headshot, they're done. And so that's rewarding in that factor. Sometimes they actually fake being hurt or fake being shot to trick you, which is a cool aspect that I was not anticipating in the game. And so like whenever they fake you out, it's always best to secure them and secure their guns. And that's kind of what you do throughout the entire mission. That's one of the responsibilities is you want to bring order to chaos is what they call it. And that's just neutralizing all the enemies. You want to secure all the civilians and you want to secure all the evidence. Now, those are the three things that you'll usually want to do throughout the entire mission. They'll have other side objectives depending on what mission it is, like, oh, find this evidence, or secure this person, or do this or that, right? You have to bring order to chaos, secure civilians, and what other objectives. That's the only way you can actually complete the missions. One of my big problems with it was that after spending 20 minutes on a mission, you have everyone neutralized that you need to have neutralized. And then you might be looking for one civilian or whatnot. And so you'd have to go through the entire level again, making sure you have everyone secured, making sure this or that is secured. And it was a pain in the ass. And I didn't realize until way after the fact that if you secure all the targets or you bring order to all chaos and you secure all the enemies, there's actually a search and rescue order you can give to your team, where then your team is able to split up and search the entire map for civilians, for evidence such as guns and whatnot. And that was something I wish I knew way sooner, because I spent a lot of time going through the entire level just looking for like one person or looking for like one thing. And a lot of the times it's either a dead civilian's already not alive that you have to secure, or it's a dead enemy that you just didn't report. So that was one annoying aspect that happens throughout the game. But the gameplay is really nice. It's really fun once you start getting it down, right? Obviously anything is fun once you fucking understand it, right? Nothing's fun if you suck at it. I would say the gameplay is like real solid, real sturdy, especially once you start understanding the mechanics and understanding your orders, understanding how to order your team and split your team. You can really start to like move really fast. You can really start to get the strategic aspect of it, which is really cool.
Now let's dive into the detail that's in the game. Now, the detail of the graphics,
of the background environment, of even just the little notes and the product parodies they do make the game so much more real and immersive, to where it's like, this is like plucked out of real world, right? One of the things is obviously the graphics, right? Everyone loves to shout out the graphics in video games when they're great. And I wish they name dropped more people who actually work on the graphics, right? Obviously, they put the credits at the end of the game with individuals and the teams who worked on it. But I wish it was more of such a thing where this individual, oh, if I said this individual's name, you know who it is and you know what they worked on, right? Kind of like a movie director, you just recognize their name and you can associate them with their work. I wish they got more credit than they do get, because they deserve it for just how great they do their job. And I could go on and on about how great the game looks. But what I think really shines is the detail, small details and everything. Like I mentioned, is they do a lot of parody brands. I think one of them is Dingles. They do a play on of Pringles and call it Dingles. They do a Lay's chips parody with Dick's potato chips. They do a Doritos parody that I think I want to say it says Choritos on there. And then they add like little things like there is a cleaning solution. But if you look at the finer details, it actually says shit streak remover, or in other ones, you look real close on notes, cell phones in the game. It has really good detail that makes it that much real. And I'm going to highlight it more because I like to do a thing called For the Love of the Game, where I make like a little tribute video to the game. And I use a lot of its great aspects, a lot of the artsy aspects, and a lot of the things that make the game shine. And I think one of the things is the details onto the little notes, the calendars, everything. If you look closely in a lot of the stuff in the missions, when you're done with the missions or during the missions, if you look closely at a lot of things, it has a lot of amazing detail. There's so many calendars throughout the games that has little stuff. And then even on computers, there's little messages, there's little emails that are being sent, and it kind of feeds into a background narrative for that mission. Like I know in the post office mission, if you go to the manager's office and you look at the computer screen, there's an email where the person's typing out, I believe so-and-so is working with someone that they should be working with. So I think in that mission, a FISA agent is working with this cartel, and they're moving stuff to the postal service, and this individual kind of finds out, ends up dying in the process, but it kind of feeds into that details, right? It submerses that mission and that level into a bigger narrative that's happening in the background. And that's just one instance of so many in the game that does such an awesome job of using all these little details to put the game up on a bigger pedestal and kind of fleshes the game out to make it feel more real. Void Interactive deserves all the praise for all the details that they put into the game. All the small little details like those, like I just mentioned, help make the game that much more appreciated and gives it so much more substance and so much more life. There's a lot of slapped ass games out there that are just money grabs that suck. This game obviously has a lot of heart and effort built into it and put into it. I know that when I actually went through the credits, they not only credited everyone who worked on it, obviously, everyone who helped create it, but they credited a lot of the players who helped give this game life. And if you actually look at the credits on this, it goes on and on forever. Even if you do the fast option, if you can try to do the fast option, it just goes on and on. And I swear it went on for like 5 minutes of just first, I don't know if it was the test players or if it was just the players who played it during the early access period. It's just little things like that show how much pride and how much care was put into the project itself, and it goes a long way. My final thoughts on the game before I get to them, there's two things that kind of took me out of the game a little bit. The two major things are the commander mode process is when, like I mentioned earlier, when you die, you get kicked out all the way in the menu and you have to load all the way back in, right? Now, for a Iron Man run, the point of Iron Man and like permadeath runs is you understand that you're losing all your progress and you're losing everything when you die. You have to start over. The commander mode, you really don't get punished. So you can do commander mode and say you lose some officers during a run and it ends. Okay, you get sent back to the main menu. You lose those officers, but you can just hire new ones right away. So there's not really a penalty. There's just the penalty of having to spend another 5 minutes of loading out, loading back into a mission. So I don't get exactly what you're losing for that, right? Is the penalty honestly just torturing the player with the loading in and out of the game? Because you don't lose anything. Like, you don't go in there with a one-man squad or two-man squad. You just hire new NPCs to take those spots. sure, you're losing the officer, but the only thing you gain if you keep the same officers is the traits that they come along with them. And it's not necessarily game making or game breaking experience with that. So that was one thing that I was just like, I feel like it's more of just a fuck you to the player for the loading times. I could be wrong. That was like one of the only things that really took it out for me with the game aspect wise. I feel like the game was such rich in detail, such rich in environment and feeling, that the lack of a more structured story overall, I feel like it kept the game from being like a next level game. Because I really love the boundaries they were pushing with the scenarios and the missions. I really love the detail that they were giving it. And I really love the little details they were putting in the background to build this ambient and droll environment that you're in. And there's so much there, so much right working, and there just really wasn't a overarching story that paid off to anything. And you're kind of just putting a token into the game and playing the game again, really. So I feel like if there was that, the struggle is going through the missions, right? That's the struggle. And your struggle is trying to keep your team together and trying to keep your team technically stress-free. But there's not like this huge payoff, this huge climax that you get for completing it. Like whenever you watch a movie or whenever you're involved in a good story, even like the best games in the world, they play off of a huge climax in the end where you feel like you achieved something, like you won, right? Or like the story, the good guy wins in the end. There's not really that icing on the cake for this, which is not necessarily a bad thing or a wrong thing. There's a lot of games where the stories aren't there, or there's not even a story at all. You're just playing, which is not a bad thing. I think just there's so much work and right for it. And man, if they just put a little bit more into creating a streamlined story for it, man, it would have done so good, because there's the detail, the environment, everything is working right for the game. Everything is working right for the game. And I feel like a well put together story that just climaxed the end into that good feeling would have been awesome. Even if it was a bad feeling that we're going for, because like I said, the feeling of the game is like, it kind of feels like a horror game. It kind of just like, you feel uneasy the whole time. So even if the game ended in a negative aspect, it could have still just been that much more. But I wouldn't necessarily blame the creators for that, because obviously such a small team put this together and they did a great job with it, and so many people supporting it, and it did great already. If I had to grade the game out of like, let's say between a 0 and a 5, I would easily give it a 3.5. It's a great game. There's not that many negatives to it. There's some parts that kind of feel like time consuming and grindy, but there's so much that's going right with it. But there's, like I said, there's a few aspects of it that kind of feel like are holding it back a little bit, and there's so much going right with it that I feel like they could have knocked it out the park even more with a story that climaxes and finishes. But that's like my overall feeling with the game. I enjoyed it. I think it's great. I still have to play the 2 DLCs. I believe it's Home Invasion and Dark Waters. So we'll see what those 2 DLCs have. I'll be posting the full run through of those 2 DLCs later. Then I'll do like one quick video on just an overview of those 2 DLCs. I think it's fun to play solo, and I think it's a lot of fun to play with friends. I know that playing with my friend, we were just goofing around the whole time, and it's just a lot of fun, and the randomness just plays into all the hilarity that happens during the game. I really liked it, and you should check it out if you haven't, and let me know what you feel. Let me know your thoughts on the game, what parts of the game you liked and what parts of the game you didn't like. And I would love to get feedback on my videos. feedback on me. Let me know what's working and what doesn't work. I really enjoy making these videos, and I hope you enjoy watching them. So thank you for watching, and come back for some more in the future. Peace.
What you doing, son?
Nothing. Just chilling. Killing.
True.